Episode of My Archstories podcast, we have two guests, Unmesh and Omkar. Both of them are currently working at Corgan. Unmesh is a project designer and Omkar is a project coordinator. So, in this episode, we talked about the corporate architecture culture in the US, and not just that, story of an international student, which is the theme of this season. And I felt this episode was so genuine, a genuine conversation between all architectural enthusiasts. So I hope you guys will thoroughly enjoy this podcast. And now let's start it.
Right.
All right. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
So how are you feeling today?
Great. Lovely weather. And I'm great to be here.
Yeah, this is a fun setup and I'm very excited.
Yeah, love your setup. This is looking
Yeah.
great. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. Not that much with all the small moving parts everywhere. So let's start with your introduction first.
Sure.
So you can go ahead first.
Hi, I'm Unmesh Kelkar. I'm originally from Mumbai, India. Came to United States in 2016. Did my master's. And then now I'm at Corgan as a project designer. I work in aviation sector.
And one thing, yeah, congratulations for your recent promotion as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Congrats, Unmesh.
And then,
My name is Omkar Lele. Hi, guys. And I came to the US in 2015. And so it's been about 8 years that I've been here. Completed my master's. Worked in Chicago for about 4 years after my master's. And then I moved to Dallas to start my journey at Corgan. And it's been about 2 years that I've been at Corgan. And it's been a great experience so far.
so all of us, we are in aviation sector. So I
Aviation.
recently started. I don't know much about it. So I actually want to know more about aviation sector. So yeah, you guys can start with anything, like from very basics. Like how was your experience when you started first?
So, Corgan as a full-time job, Corgan is my only job. So I haven't worked anywhere else. So after coming to US, I did few internships and I worked in different sectors, but aviation felt the most unique. And I thought I am personally interested in public spaces as a whole. And I was looking for a niche which is unique enough to explore public spaces, but also be in a very different environment. So aviation was a interesting fit, and I'm still learning. There's lots going on, and I don't still feel I have touched all the parts of the airport. So I'm fairly new. I'm mostly working on terminal projects, big terminal projects, which are public spaces oriented. That gives me a little bit of a sort of segue from my interest to my profession.
My aviation experience has been, I'm still learning. It's in a very developmental stage, I would say. Because I started working in India, and my experience in India was limited to small architecture, schools, and residential, maybe a mall or something like that. And aviation was not ever on my radar when I started working in India in 2013. After that, after moving to the US, during my masters, I did not really have the exposure of with a general architecture degree. You can actually get into airport architecture. So again, it was not on my radar. Completed my masters and then worked in Chicago. A lot of our projects, again, a small firm, consisted of civic buildings, consisted of schools and residentials, and a few public projects, stuff like that, but never again aviation on my radar. And then I used to see Unmesh's updates on LinkedIn, and I was like, how can someone make it to aviation? And I was always intrigued. And then we got in touch. We started talking about the fact that I wanted to transition. And I did not think I would be able to transition to aviation again. But I was just curious to know about his journey, and he said, why don't you come along? And I was like, how? It's like, just apply, we'll see what happens. And then I did that. And so after that, the experience that I was expecting, that it's going to be extremely difficult for somebody who does not have any background, or I wouldn't say inclination, but any awareness about aviation at all, could find it easy to fit in. And so then when I started, I initially got a little overwhelmed with a lot of terminology and not understanding what it is that airport architecture means. But ever since that, for the last 2 years, I found airport architecture to be similar to architecture in general. One of the important things that I found about architecture was architecture is about building, built environment or buildings in general, and then the core principles stay the same when it comes to architecture.
I would
It could
totally
be-
second that. Like the nuts and bolts of our discipline have lots of commonalities, and you could use your experience on in other typologies, in any typology you want. Each typology will have some special lingo, and you'll learn that lingo. But at the core of it, there are lots of common uh, crafts and sort of nuts and bolts which people can bring from other firms and other experiences to aviation. That's what makes it even richer, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, to me, I think I'm in that phase right now where it's like everything's overwhelming because it's interesting to even know the workflow because my experience when I was working back in Nepal and even in here, I was working in very small firm. So and the way they work is like somebody will come and then give you the work to do and then you'll be doing that. But in Corgan, it's mostly about how you are taking your own steps, and that is also very interesting to me because you have to be proactive on yourself. And initially, I had no idea about it, so it was like, okay, so what do I do now? Like, what's the next step for this? And later on, it's like I mean, I just started 6 or 7 months ago, so it's like lots of learning experience, learning curve. But yeah, I feel it's really interesting, the whole aviation experience. And also, can you guys tell us about your role in the firm? So, like what you do as a project designer.
So I would say if I give a basic background in what kind of career
Yeah.
paths you have at Corgan, so I would say there are three main paths. There is a design track, there is a management track, and there's a technical track. So management track is usually people are most familiar with, and if you start as a architecture intern or some kind of entry level employee at the firm, you will do everything for sure. But as you start developing bit more interest in certain tasks versus others, so people become project architects, project managers. This is usually called management track, where people become program managers, where they have direct contact with a client, and they are assigned and aligned with that client, and they make sure the project gets done through and through from A to Z. So that's management track. And the design track is usually in Corgan, it's a little new. It's been 4 years, the design track, where you could become a designer, then project designer, design manager, and design director. What it means is those people usually move around the projects, and they are looking at firm's design ethos as a whole. So they might be moving around the projects bit more, and that's what I have realized even in my position, that I do move around projects a lot. But you could also decide for yourself what kind of designer you want to be. But that's the basic idea. And Omkar could speak more about the management track.
Yeah.
Um, the management track or the project track, like Unmesh said, is your standard path most architects tread on. Design track in a firm like Corgan, I mean, I think one of the bigger distinctions or bigger realizations that I had when I got to Corgan was about Corgan being a corporate firm. And my experience before that had been small firms. Small firms had been like you were talking about workflow, right? The workflow at small firms is very different compared to the workflow at Corgan. And so my experience at a company like Corgan was less about aviation and more about corporate American architecture firm cultures. And that is the most interesting aspect of my work at Corgan, according to me. And that's wherein you will have these subdivisions and these paths based on your interests. At a small firm like you also experienced, you would have somebody who's helping you with tasks, helping you with a day-to-day conversation. Your development is kind of driven in a smaller firm, and um, after a point you will find yourself doing everything in a small firm. This is your project, do everything. In a corporate company like Corgan, my expectation or understanding was that I will be pigeonholed into doing a task or a type of a task that would limit me to doing that for the next several years, because this guy brings in this kind of an experience, put him to do this kind of work and continue doing it. But as you said, it's less about spoon feeding or pigeonholing you, especially at a company like Corgan, and it's more about what kind of ownership you take. And then, so in Unmesh's case, he did exhibit a lot of design talent and interest in design, and that's the kind of, I guess, torch that he was bearing for the last couple of years, which Corgan looked at and said, this guy is fit for getting into the design track position. And so did he express his interest in, experimenting with that kind of an aspect of architecture instead of, going the standard route. In my case, I did bring in a little bit of an experience with respect to project, like running a project, especially because coming from a small firm, initially, obviously, you're being handheld and all of that, but you're also asked to lead a project just right off the bat. You've barely completed a year or two, but we were only 6 or 5 people, and so I was leading a project. And obviously, in the capacity that I understood it, but because I brought that kind of an experience, my natural progression was going to be in the project track. And currently, and it is pretty flexible at corporate companies like Corgan, where you, for some time, you can experiment with a track or a path, and then experiment with another path, and then come up with your own journey.
That's true.
And that's where I feel my experience has consistently been developmental in the upward trajectory kind of a thing, where I've started to understand a little more about the nuances in how you can craft your career.
One thing I would add to this is, although I explained 3 design tracks, the everyday work, it's not very different. So, and it's a good thing. Everyone has to do everything. They have to have basic proficiency in doing things. Like right from, everyone is a designer in some sense. Everyone is contributing to a design. So everyone is a designer for sure. Everyone is managing something in everyday project work. Everyone is looking at code compliance. Everyone is looking at fire protection. So all the tasks are expected from everyone, and then you have a small emphasis or your interest as an extra, and that's what you bring in, either as a project designer or project coordinator or technical designer. And I think that's what I'm liking about where Corgan is headed, where people have these choices, where they can find a niche for themselves. And that is more established in other bigger firms, maybe like HOK or HKS, and Corgan is getting there. And I think that's the best time to be in the firm, because then you can craft that path bit more and you have a stake in how it shapes up.
So your role is a project coordinator?
The title, I would say, is project coordinator.
Okay.
Titles are
They're a little tricky.
Yeah. Titles are a topic of conversation by themselves. But instead of the title, I would like to focus on the fact that it's more of a project management, project related track. So my focus is eventually running a project and running a project. Whereas someone like Unmesh, his primary focus will be to provide design guidance on multiple projects.
Yeah.
A lot of his work will consist of coming in early on a project, and setting a design ethos for that project, understanding the client's expectations, or the cultural influences of that particular region or something like that. And then making sure that ethos that has been set up or that has been agreed upon is maintained throughout the life of that project A. But at the same time, after the initial brainstorming session or initial design session is over, or that phase is over, then he will move on to a different project and provide similar kind of guidance, assistance, those kind of things. Where in my case, I would be taking on a project and running through the entire or a large part of that the life of that project, and then move on to another one. So that's a little bit of I guess
I think it's a good example, but there is a little bit of crossover. For example, even though he might be focused on Atlanta or Austin as an area, and he's leading multiple projects and start to end, he'll also do a closeout, finish it up, and give it to the client. At the same time, he's also giving feedback back to the firm, saying this is how all the other projects could be managed, and this is how I learned. So I think that's where the crossover is. Even a designer is doing that, creating feedback loop for all the projects to do and follow certain kind of standards. Even a project manager also does that, to set up some sort of protocols and methods for staffing internally, externally. So these are some of the sort of common aspects. Whichever track you are in, you're going to do certain tasks.
And good thing is, compared to what I've heard from other firms or people from other firms, it doesn't seem like there is a hard line between project design, project management, and project
Like a technical design.
Technical design areas, at least for now, at a place like Corgan, which is itself in a
It's our
developmental
job to make it
strategy.
like that, actually. We can shape it. We can shape
Right.
it.
Yeah. And I like that because there is liberty, there is freedom, there is latitude to move. To assume roles, even if your track or your designation is not associated. Like, for example, I'm not a project designer, but if I have a design input on a different project, I'm not being barred from providing that design input, or vice versa. And in Unmesh's case, or in any other project designer's case, even though they're project designers and they're bringing in the design aspect of the projects to multiple projects, they are also running their own show. They are also running their own projects.
Like I work on CA on multiple projects, so I also have to do other work, which makes it better.
What's the full form of CA?
CA is construction administration.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we might know it, but viewers, they might not know it.
So if we look at life of the project,
Yeah.
if it starts, it's like conceptual schematic design, then you have a design development, then you make the construction drawings, which is called construction documentation, CDs, and then once it goes out to bid, contractors come in, they start building the project. That's where you have to supervise a little bit. That phase is called CA, construction administration.
So you guys have both worked in India as well, right?
A little bit, yes.
So what do you think about the difference of experience working here and in India?
I think the 2.5 years that I worked in India full time before moving to the US for my master's, it was a small firm, and I had absolutely no idea about the design phases. Like, they are so well defined in any small or big firm in the US. I think that's where the contractual standardization comes into picture. Over here, AI kind of governs how things are contracted, what kind of language are people using. In India, it's a little more free, less of COA, Council of Architecture's standard contract agreements, at least in small firms that I worked at, that it's governed. Contracts are based a lot more on the firm runners and the client's understanding of what a contract is, and that kind of dictates. There are typical phases, like, for example, if you start a project, you are eventually going to get it permitted, so you will have to provide permit documents, but not necessarily are you calling that phase a schematic design phase, or you are submitting a 100% set or a 60% set. This terminology does not exist. Another thing that does not exist in India, at least in the firms that I worked in, or the firm that I worked in, was specifications. I absolutely was oblivious to the idea of specifications when I was working in India. I thought drawings was all it was. And even CA was you are on the site and you are running into, oh, how do you build this? You've drawn it, but we have no idea. The labor doesn't have an idea, the contractor doesn't have an idea, and the boss calls and says, you know what, I'll come over, and he literally makes a sketch on the
Yeah.
wall that's half
That's true.
and that sketch is supposed to be explaining how this is built.
Yeah.
There is no so there did not exist a concept of quality control, because there was no quality standard put in the first place, because it was, I think it was less documentation and more understanding based. I'm not calling something bad or good over here. I'm just saying that there is a very different approach to architecture in general. Over here, architecture is more of a looked at from a from a liability standpoint.
Yeah.
Something happens, architect is under scrutiny.
Right.
Back home in India, that's not taken as seriously as over here. It's not a liability. In India, architecture is not a liability, or less of a liability and more of a, at least from where I see it, it's more of a business, and it's intuition based, or experience based. Maybe bigger firms did it differently.
Yeah, I had completely different experience. I think you mainly worked on high-rise residentials and commercial projects, right? In back in India.
I would call it mid-rise residential and
Residential.
mid-rise commercial or school buildings.
And it was a smaller firm,
Yes,
so it was a bit
smaller
more
firm.
organic naturally, and things were sort of in transition, movement. And it was a single person firm. That also makes a difference.
Single person, and had been running the firm for over second generation architect. So
Right,
his father ran the business, and then he ran the
I
business.
think that's why I had a completely different experience, because the firm I worked in was one of the biggest firms in India, and they were doing extremely high profile projects, and it was a very high pressure environment. I moved to Ahmedabad from Mumbai to work there, and I worked there for 1.5 years. I was mainly working on their healthcare projects, but they're well known for Central Vista project and Sabarmati Riverfront and stuff. But it was a very high pressure environment. As the founder had done their masters and PhD in US, he took all the standards and stuff back in his firm. So we even at that time had tracks. There was a project architect, there was project manager, there was project detailer. Things were a little different, but still there were these groups of specialization and people used to work. It was very intense. Specification, that's a very interesting topic.
Yeah.
I at that time absolutely had no idea about what specifications were. I was just drawing drawings and going to site, and very similar experiences. Contractor used to ask questions. I never had an idea if I'm liable of if I draw something will go wrong. I was always in touch with my architect. But specification, now I look back, I do remember receiving big dockets. And I had to check something, and I was told to check something, but I don't think I did a good job. I was like, it's like I think if I remember it right, it was like an air handling unit, and I got like a big bunch, and there was so much information, and I'm like, what do I do with this? Nobody told me anything, so I just flipped through, put a stamp on it, and then like send it. And I had no idea what was going on. Yeah, but now when I look back, I know what was going on. I think what I was doing is I was taking that and sending it to our mechanical consultant. That was what I was doing.
Yeah, I think when you are in architecture school, I think that's what it is supposed to be as well. I don't know. Just like
I don't
you are
agree
so
with that
much
at all.
focused into designs and all.
No, I would play devil's advocate and saying I think there is a difference between profession of architecture and discipline of architecture. So what we learn at a school is discipline of architecture. If you want to learn about profession, you get into profession. Why do you want to waste time in learning something in vacuum and then go to a place? Just do internship. Just go there, work. In fact, I would even go 2 steps ahead. If someone is so interested in profession and not in discipline as much, now there are ways where you don't have to even go to school. You can just start internships, work right from high school, keep working at a place, and you can grow. Now NCARB allows non-accreditation also as a starting point for licensure. You could become licensed architect without a degree. There is a path for it. You could get more experience, you'll obviously have a little bit more requirement. But if someone is not interested in the profession, history of profession and all that, I totally understand that. And if you're solely focused on physical environment and buildings, I think it's a better opportunity to work in different firms, do small internships and get experience. I think that's what everyone's pet peeve is usually. Like, I wasted 5 years of my time,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then I'm doing this which is not related. If you feel that, I think the best way is to not do that and start from year one and just work in a firm. You will learn all the concepts, what you want in profession. Of course, you'll miss out on many formative years of collaboration and history and text, how to read text, theory, all that. But if you're not into it, then you can sort of take a different route. I haven't seen too many people doing that, but I wish someone would do it and share their experience.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah.
I think that the last statement kind of hit home with me, because at the age that we are in right now, I believe that it is now easy to discern between profession and the discipline of architecture. But back then, when we were in school or we were just about to go into school, this was a very foreign idea. What we are indoctrinated with, or what we are conditioned to believe, is that you go to school
You have
all
to.
the way until you start working,
Yeah.
and you can't start working until you have a professional
Degree.
education.
Yeah.
So at that time, it is very difficult
agree.
to
think like that.
Yeah.
to discern.
Yeah.
Oh, my approach is I want to work, because school is not going to provide that to me. Which is why there is a expectation imbalance.
Yeah.
In school, you expect everything that you've learned in school is going to come back when you start working. And that's when the expectation imbalance happens, where you're like, oh wait, what the hell is a specification? Why did we not talk about specifications in school or CA in school? Well, obviously, because that's a different
different
part of
area.
architecture and phase of architecture. I think what is more important in schools, in my opinion, is to get a general idea. Even if somebody does not go to an internship, it would be nice for somebody to understand that there does exist this kind of or what can you expect from the profession. At least a basic beginner one day or a handout or something like that in school, where a person can understand or can prepare themselves to be ready for the profession.
Although I must say, we had a course like that in 4th year, which was called professional practice.
Yes.
Yeah,
but
we
I
had
had
that too.
But I don't think anybody liked that.
Yeah,
course.
nobody, and
Paid
that's
attention.
the other thing. Like, that's the other, I would say, the flip side of the coin, where when you're told something through school, you don't really pay much attention.
I totally believe it has to be sort of on the job learning.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when we have coursework, it becomes like a chore. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I hate this, I don't like it.
Yeah,
And you're
that's
so engrossed in your studio work, that professional practice, that one course becomes like a ISO. It's like, oh, I don't want to get into it. It's so
Yeah.
boring. It's so much text and stuff. So I think what Cincinnati as a school did back then, now they don't have that kind of course. We had alternate semesters, coursework and internship. So I did one semester of coursework and one semester of internship. So that's what their way of integrating profession into the discipline. That you do your studios and stuff, then you go off, do your internship and come back. I think that gave a little bit of perspective. So I would highly recommend people to do as many internships as you can starting. And I think that's where we have a little bit of a disadvantage as an international students, that as per law, I think we have to work on campus.
On our first year.
Not even first year, but let's say if you are doing your coursework, you're allowed to work 20 hours, right?
Yeah.
But it has to be on campus. You can't work outside campus.
Yeah.
Can you? I haven't
There are
heard
very
that.
few opportunities through the coursework, unless the program is designed
That way.
for a co-op.
Yeah.
There is no way you can work outside.
Yeah. I think that puts us as a little bit of a disadvantage, because people who started sort of masters with me, who are citizens here, they kept in touch with the firm they were working with. So when all of us graduated and then we went to the firms, they had like edge over me. They were working continuously throughout them. They had built relationships and they were like 1 or 2 years ahead of me. And I have like real example. There was a person who's still at Corgan. I really love his work, and I worked with him actually, and he did that while he was doing masters. He kept working with Corgan, and now he has so much confidence in moving ahead. But I was a little bit behind on all that. I think those opportunities puts us at a little bit of disadvantage. I feel. I wish those laws get a little bit uh, better for us eventually.
So we were talking about international students, and as an international students, I feel like one of the most important thing that you have to think about after graduation when you go for your first job is your finance management as well. So I've seen your LinkedIn post, which is like very long and then like very insightful as well. And can you give a little bit of idea on that? Like you guys both can add like what your experience were and then how
For sure.
how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I will just say, I mean, as it's a little long,
Yeah.
people might miss it. So I'll say like a 2-minute version of it.
Yeah.
It's just important to be mindful of finances if you start there, so that you can put a little bit focus on finances as a subject. And finance will include money management, taxation, filing taxes, talking to right people. At least if you start there, I think that's like the most important thing. So at least take out some time in your 4 months or 6 months early on to address these issues. And I don't want to get to specifics of it because it's such a long subject and stuff. But I would just to start with, when you start a job, you're going to accept an offer, and that offer will have lots of text related to your finances. You might not be able to get into it on day one because half of the words you will have no idea. So if you get time, try to learn it. But if not, in 6 months, at least give yourself some time to get through it, talk to right people. Firms like Corgan or any big firms, there's so much resource. You can talk to a person face to face and ask very basic questions. I have no idea what this 401k thing is. Give me like a basic 101 on it. Stuff
Talking
like
about that, I recently figured out what 401k is.
But I think it's very common. I
Yeah.
mean, we come from a different country. There are so many new words we get exposed to, and we have no idea what they are. And I think that's where I want to stress that the first 6 months, you want to make sure you're at least familiar with all the words, so that 4 years down the line, you're not like, oh, I completely missed that and I wasted 4 years of growth in my portfolio or something like that. Or if when you change the job, how money gets transferred forward from the retirement account to the new account. You want to be at least basically familiar so that you don't waste that time. So it's been 4 years for me at Corgan, and I feel very confident now. Okay, thank God I spent a little bit of time at the start so I didn't waste any of the early gains I currently have.
Like Unmesh said, in the initial in the conversation before this, how the onus is on the person. The school is not required to give you any education in terms of this is how the profession is going to
Totally
be.
agree. They didn't give any of this.
It's not on
education.
them. I mean,
It's
they
not
are
on-
providing
yeah.
as good education as they can, as to the best of their abilities and to the best of their designed coursework after a lot of years of thought and everything. Similarly, the onus is still on us to understand finances. In both cases, it's us who the onus is on, and I can speak to that because my first couple of years in the US were not as I would say well planned financially. I did not spend much time thinking about my finances, and so when he said that the initial first couple of months that you spend on understanding all of these concepts, do the homework, do the research, all of these things, the better it is for you in the long run and in throughout the next couple of years or throughout the rest of your life, because financial awareness or financial savviness is for your own self. You will help yourself if you spend enough time. And so the day I started to realize that I need to start taking care of my finances is when I started to look into these things, and actually all of this stuff helped me in the long run. And then I have a lot of conversations with Unmesh because he has been on track with respect to his finances, and after a lot of conversations I realized that he already has all of this wealth of knowledge, and so after sharing thoughts with each other, I can say I've grown a lot of my knowledge wealth, as well as my financial wealth.
I would say pay taxes from like first year. Even if you're
Oh,
not
yeah.
earning anything, it's important to keep your tax returns up to date. And I'll tell you why. There are 3-4 aspects to it. Obviously, your citizenship requirements, your green card, having good documentation of things helps. Also, while buying a house, there are lots of requirements, and that gets scrutinized. And at that time, you can't fix things quickly because you are into something and that needs a fix 3 years behind,
Yeah.
and then you are in this trouble. So as students come in, I think from first year on, I would highly recommend them to pay taxes. Even if you are not earning, uh, you will always have some sort of savings account which will give you interest, and that you can report as an income, and then you can pay taxes on it and have like a return. So you sort of get used to the systems here. And at my college, at least at that time, they had a law college help. So we used to go to the law college, and there were people assigned to us saying if you need any help filing the tax returns, because obviously I never filed a tax return back in India. My sister is a chartered accountant, so I was like, oh, you take care of it. And when I came here, we have to do everything by ourselves, filing everything, and it's not a great feeling. But I don't want anyone to put it aside saying, oh, I'll look at it later. Make sure you're on top of it. It will bite you later. So
Yeah.
that would be my
That's true.
biggest suggestion. Like, make sure you're on top of your taxes.
And also, like talking about finances, like as an architect, I mean, in architecture profession, most of people, they feel like they are overworking, but at the same time they are not being compensated enough. So what do you guys think about it? And I think for me, it's also due to comparison with other discipline, like when you see computer science making like 100K per year, like minimum and all. And what do you guys think about that?
I think it's a
Loaded
vast
question.
It's a vast topic. It's a loaded question.
I mean,
Any answer in this direction is going to be very opinionated.
Yeah.
In my opinion, because this answer is going to be based on his experience. My answer will be based on my experience. My experience so far tells me, and the conversations that I've had about this topic, is that the remuneration that you get for the services that you do is not only based on your performance or the company's performance or profit. It is also based on the impact your work has on society, your impact as an architect on society, and how far-reaching the impact is. That is how your profession is valued in the world, and from that standpoint, a computer engineer, the impact that a computer scientist or whatever computer engineer has on society is, and I'm talking about financial impact. Their work is so big and so scalable, and it can reach so many people, is that their profit margins are extremely high. And so you're right, you have a very valid point. It is because of the comparison that we basically end up doing with our peers. Oh, this guy, my friend, 2 years ago he started and he's already like crossing 200K already. Whereas an architect, 5 years, oh my god, I'm still under 100K. And that's the reality.
I totally agree with this approach. I want to, in fact, add a little bit to it. I think at every time in our cultures, let's say we are currently in technology-oriented culture, so all the technology-oriented fields do add bit more value than other fields. So it shows up in the pay they have. If you think about 1970s, 80s, when the automobile industry was their heyday, General Motors and all the Detroit progress. At that time, mechanical engineers and electrical engineers used to make more money. They were the highest paid professions at that time. Computer science was not the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Windows was sort of coming up and eventually become what it is now. And then that led us to computer revolution, more jobs. So that didn't existed. And if we think about empires and people were building forts and all that, and there was a master architect as a profession, and that person used to do lots of things. He was an engineer, she was a architect, come construction manager. There were lots of things around it. But maybe at that time, that profession had more role to bigger role to play in the culture, and that's why it was more important. Currently, unfortunately, it's not the most valuable thing, and I think it's our job as well to express our value a bit better. And you will always have to find the value alignment. You have to work with people who would value that kind of work, and
Value
it
you.
gives value fit is very important. If you go to a client who is into something else, they find value in something else and not what we offer, then it's going to be a value misalignment, and that's where we're not going to make money. But we have to find such people who would have the value alignment, and then that will make things better.
Yeah, I mean, even from the standpoint of, I mean, right now he spoke about client and architects in general, but even as employees and employers, you need to find an employer who actually can seek value in you so that you feel valued enough. And
Yep.
my experience tells me that definitely work with a couple people to understand. And I wouldn't say work with a couple people. My approach is, if you don't find that you are being valued enough at your workplace, then feel free to change your workplace until such a time that you actually start seeing that your work is valued, not only financially, because salary is just one
One aspect, yeah.
of the way you feel respected or valued. There are many other things. Is the company actually looking out for you from the opportunity standpoint?
Growth standpoint.
Are you actually being recognized? For a lot of people, success or happiness has a lot of different definitions. To your definition, is the company or the place that you're working at, is it beneficial for you? Because you don't want to end up working in a place that pays you 200K, but you are feeling like undervalued from all other standpoints, or you feel like your work is so insignificant that every Tom, Dick and Harry is making 200K. So there's nothing more that you're bringing to the table from work satisfaction standpoint. So I think that is also a very important discussion to be had in this respect. Like, salary is obviously one thing, finance is very important,
For sure.
but along with finances, there are other ways a company can value you, and that value alignment is extremely important.
One thing I would add to this, just to make things better for all of us, because your audience will be students who might be starting architecture degree or just finishing up. I think 2-3 things we can do for ourselves. We all know that our pays are a little bit less than, compared to our peers who are in engineering or medical fields. So that is established. There's no two ways about it. However, we can try to reduce our student debts, make sure from early on, really be diligent about keeping our student debt as low as possible, because as an international student, you're already paying out of state tuition, which is a lot. So it's like all the odds are stacked against us in that sense. So we have to be super careful to keep the debts low. So when you come out of school, try to keep the debt as low as possible. And when you start working, make sure you have a every dollar approach, and make sure that early 4 or 5 years, when you might have a slightly lesser pay compared to your peers, that's when you can sort of protect your wealth a little bit, be diligent about it, so that you are not at big disadvantage at 4 or 5 year mark. And once you start getting into a position where you can win projects on your own, I think that's where things are going to change for you. So I would still say there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The starting salaries might be a little low, but things could get better for you if you take certain route which is higher risk, and it will be rewarded in some way.
Yeah, talking about student loans, I think most of students, they also need to start looking for assistantships like TA, RA, because I have I get messages once in a while, and then people are like, oh, we didn't even know about this thing, and I'm like, you should know about it, because that's how you save money.
I think early on you have to find opportunities to make money while you are in school. And doing a teaching assistantship or research assistantship, these are excellent opportunities. And even doing odd jobs is totally fine. It's just that you have to manage your effort. If you're spending so much time doing really grunt work, and you're also have to do your coursework, it's very taxing on you.
Clarification: odd jobs equals to legal odd jobs.
Legal odd jobs. Yes,
that
yes,
are
that's
well,
true.
that are well within your rights
In your
as
campus, all the shops, all the retail, libraries,
I mean,
and everything.
I did dining jobs, so
Yeah. These
those
are
kind
hard
of jobs. These are
these are
absolutely
important to do. If you if you go for it, you have to do it sometimes, and that's totally fair. It is taxing on you though. So
and for me,
Sure, go ahead.
for me it was so helpful, because like at least I get out without any student debt. So
Just like he said, every dollar approach. I guess I'm piggybacking a lot on what he's saying, but I think that's fine, right? This is a
that's
conversation.
perfect.
Like he said, every dollar approach. I think even when you're applying for grad school or undergrad school or whatever it is, I mean, if you're directly coming here to work, that's a very different scenario. But from our perspective as international students who come here to do our masters or bachelors or whatever it is, I think every dollar approach starts there. Doing your research or taking ownership of this decision, it's a big financial decision to come and do your masters in a different country, which is more expensive than doing it back home. Yes, that is where the high risk higher investment of finances or higher readiness of finances will result in higher rewards, because that's what you're coming here for, right? You're coming here for better opportunities. So doing the research early on and doing the work early on is going to bear good fruit. Not knowing is unfortunately not the option.
That's true.
It's gonna cost.
If you don't know about TA
There's a
and
cost to
RA,
it. There's a cost to it.
You will end up paying more money.
I'll give an example. There's so many opportunities. Like people who come here who do TA, RA. I did that at my time. I was getting some waiver on the tuition. I was getting health insurance support. There's so much money you could sort of stick together and make it work for you. One thing I will mention, and many people ask this question to me, how does college influence your job prospects? And I would love to know your thoughts as well. I think it does make a difference, but it's not as big as people think while we are sitting back in our country. So it's not like I was like really focused on, oh, this university is ranked 3, this is 4, this is 4.5. I don't think it's that important. You can be in certain city, certain area, and you can have networking opportunities which are better, but it's more holistic than what I thought at that time. I was looking at rankings in such a fine tooth comb. I don't think that's helpful. You can be in a decent university which is top 20, and you will have in my view, and you can disagree, but you can have a similar opportunities getting into whichever firm you like.
Same, totally same answer. I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter at all, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to such a big firm that only values people from Ivy League schools, then that's a completely different conversation.
But that does happen sometimes.
Yeah, there are some very niche boutiques architect kind of firms that will only take in certain people because they have their filters, to be fair.
Everyone has
their
a filter.
filters. Everybody has a filter. But if you want to work at a standard good, especially a company like Corgan, any kind of a corporate American firm, I don't think that kind of filter exists or has that big of an impact. Actually speaking, even the portfolio, if your portfolio is not like, oh my God, my portfolio is not up to the mark, I don't think I can submit this portfolio. I don't think that approach is, I mean, a portfolio is important, but it doesn't have that big of an impact. Your GPA does not have that big of an impact.
Agreed.
Yes, all of these things will add up as your impact, but what I've found is that your application, like being smart in the way you apply to companies, maybe it could be the timing at which you apply, maybe it could be
totally
connections,
yeah,
and
networking.
Another taboo that a lot of people back home have about is I don't want to get into a firm based on a connection. I don't want, I want everything to be done on my own. I mean, making a connection is you taking a step.
Yeah.
Everything is you're going to get someone's help
Yeah,
at some point.
yeah.
Even think about it, universities. When we are in certain university, even that's a connection.
Yeah.
Right.
If someone
Alumni
sees,
network
yeah, it's a
is a
connection.
connection.
I think we have to use as much networking opportunity as we
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
and use your skills to make yourself approachable, and share your passion and attitude. I think that helps. One thing I would add to this, when you're looking at universities, one thing we could look at, and I didn't do it as good of a job. Thankfully, I landed at the University of Cincinnati, which has a great alumni network and connections to employers. I think that's something I want to tell everyone who is applying. Look for a university who has good industry connections. So if that university has good career fairs, what kind of firms come there, what kind of connections the professors have with industry, I think that's going to help you the most in getting that first internship. And once you get to that point, then getting a job would be
Becomes
a breeze.
easy.
Yeah, much easier. I think that starting point, I have heard from people that getting that first job is the hardest thing. And I think that happened to me for the internship, but didn't happen for the full-time job. So that helped a little bit.
It happened to me as well, because for my first internship, I did internship in Ames, so it's the same small town of Iowa State. Yeah, and I applied through like all other firms and all, but the thing was like it was just second semester for me in the US, and I had zero connections and I had no idea how to do it, like what's the approach. And also like I went to career fair, but at the same time, like maybe I was not very like used to with how to talk with people in career fair, because that's something that didn't exist back home.
Right. We were not used to that kind of environment.
Yeah,
That's
and
true.
and then after, that's why the first time I got internship in Ames, and I'm still thankful for that, because that helped me a lot to take care of my finances, because
That's true.
it helped me to pay all my tuitions after that. But at the same time, that also helped me to know more about like what would be my next step to get a job. So even for getting into Corgan, I was preparing myself for my portfolios and connections from way before. Like I think we had our career fair last year on February, but I already finished my portfolio like November, October around. I was working throughout the summer for my portfolio and try to get connections at the
That's
same
great,
time.
actually.
Yeah.
Being prepared for that.
And then
that helps.
And I think I already got like few interviews in December and Jan, and schools were not even started at that point. And then after, when I got my job offer from Corgan, it was like Jan early or something like that, and it was not even career fair. And my target was like I have to get it before career fair, because I didn't want to stress out myself at career fair.
It is a stressful time for
Yeah.
sure.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would love to know from Omkar, being in Urbana-Champaign, which is very close to Chicago. So even I was interested in Urbana-Champaign. Actually, that was my one of the first sort of choices, and I was really interested in being in Chicago. It's such a amazing city. How was your experience after graduating? The application, how were they received? Did the Urbana-Champaign name helped you in sort of getting some connections?
My experience is a little bit of a different experience. It's not in the same lines as I did not do an internship when I was in school. My first summer, I had a different opportunity that I was chasing, which was a teaching opportunity. And that's what I wanted to do. And the internship would have come in the middle of that. And I did not have the breadth to think that I could negotiate these couple of weeks of teaching with the internship. And I wanted to focus on that teaching opportunity. So I did not do my internship in my first summer. And after that, I did not really find an opportunity to get into an internship sort of a situation. So I did not do an internship. And even after graduating, my story is a little bit of a different. But for a lot of other people who stayed true to the path and excelled in their career fairs, there are very good examples of people directly landing a job in the career fair. I think we used to graduate in May, but our career fairs used to happen in November, I think, or December, something like that, or even in February. Yeah, February.
Yeah.
And people would land jobs in Chicago very easily, because University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign has great connections throughout the Midwestern region, especially Chicago. And Chicago having a very great history of architecture and a lot of headquarters of big architecture firms like ASGG or Adrian Smith Gordon Gill or Getch Partners or
Studio Gang.
SOM, I think.
SOM, I think,
also
yeah.
has it, yeah.
Studio Gang. They have great rapport with all the people that practice architecture on a world scale that are headquartered in Chicago. So a lot of those firms used to come and interview people at the career fair, and very easily would they find themselves with a job even before graduating. I think in most cases that happened, and so it was not far from reality to expect that going to Urbana-Champaign will definitely lead to great opportunities right out of school.
Yeah, I also think I agree on that because, like, even for me, I would say like Iowa State, it's mostly Midwestern. So for me, like if I want to go to East Coast, then it won't work because they only have most of the connection in Midwestern region. So maybe if you are coming to the US, maybe you want to think about that as well.
Yeah,
Like,
I had no idea about any of this when
Yeah.
I was researching universities, that how university has an influence zone in some sense,
Yeah.
how much connections they have, and they do cover some big regions. I think that's a good point to think about while applying for masters.
The other thing is it's difficult to gauge whether
That's
you want to
true.
be on the East Coast or West Coast or Central Coast. I mean, Midwest or wherever. Because my journey is a great example of that. I never thought I would ever even consider Texas as forget Dallas, Texas as a whole. I never wanted to be in Texas, but now I am, and so I think it's difficult to judge even for people even for American people who've never really gone out of their hometown, maybe for a visit or two. But there are so many people at Corgan that come from Iowa, that come from North Dakota, South Dakota, that come from California, that are working in
Georgia,
Dallas,
so
who
many,
never thought they would end up in Dallas, but now they
Yeah.
are. And I think it's great to do the research, and if you know that, say for example, I have family in East Coast, I want to stay close to my family. In that sense, or in that case, or I have fascination towards New York, for example. In that sense, it would be a good starting point to start thinking about, okay, I want to be in a university that's close to New York, or may have influence on the firms that I envision myself being in. But sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not work. But I think, again, it's good to do that research if you have that kind of an idea. Not everyone will have that kind of an idea.
Agreed.
But yeah.
Yeah, so I think we are coming around at the end of the podcast. So you guys want to add any final things to it?
What do we say? I think communication, that would be the biggest. As you are doing a great job in calling people, talking to them, and communicating and sharing our thoughts. I hope that helps students and also people who are here who are starting their jobs to get in touch with new people whom they have not met, and share thoughts. I think that's what I lacked, at least when I was back in India. I didn't make enough calls here to know about things better. I think I was too hesitant, scared. But I think you starting a podcast like this, I hope it helps people to open themselves to talking to people, getting in touch. I think that would be my biggest suggestion. Just start talking to different people who have different experiences.
I don't have any suggestion. I have a thought that I think in general would help. Not help. In general, would be a good thought to end this whole conversation on. Is that I think what you're doing, yes, that is definitely communicating people's thoughts and experiences with other people, and all of that. But more importantly, what I think is you are pursuing something that you're interested in, and I think that's very important. If you are, I don't think you ever knew that you were passionate about podcasts, right? I don't
No.
think you can even say right now that you are passionate about
Yeah.
podcasts. It's something that you're experimenting with, and slowly it's growing on you. Slowly you've started to develop an interest, and you've started to make this kind of a portfolio of, I have these many videos. Where this will go, how this will pan out, you have no idea. But you're pursuing it because you love it. You've started to develop this into a hobby. I think as your experience, in your experience as an international student, while you're doing your college, while you're doing your internships, your education, or your employment, all of these things, I think starting new things and experimenting with them as your side quests or side hobbies, I think that will keep you motivated for a very long time.
Yeah, I think that's so
Continuing,
true. That's
yeah.
so true.
I
That
think
gives you an edge as well. I mean, it gives him so much like variety in his portfolio, personality. I think it's gonna help a lot.
Yeah,
for sure.
even in your career, it will help you, or in just your journey, it will give you a great experience. Whether it helps you or not is a different story. He has great experiences that to share, that he's pursued throughout his time in the US, and even I have. And I think both of us can agree on this, that pursuing other things than your mainstream focus will always keep you motivated and on your best mood and on your
Right.
toes. I think that is something that people do not.
I don't think we get to talk about that.
We
as
get
much.
to talk about that. Yeah. I don't think we get to talk about just doing other things. I think, yeah, your main focus is great, but just do other things.
Yeah, one thing that I want to add is like there are things. I mean, there is life outside of architecture that you have to enjoy, and like not just completely obsessed with that.
Right.
Architecture, it's there. I mean, it's a profession. At the same time, yeah, you can be passionate about it. You love it. It's fine, but still, like you
Doing
need
other
something
things,
else
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think it's the same concept, taking ownership of finances, taking ownership of your decisions, but take ownership of your life.
Yeah.
Just
Have
this
fun,
is your
do
life.
other
Like
things,
I
yeah.
don't think if you were not interested, you would have this exquisite a setup, but you do because you're interested. And I think I'm motivated looking at all of
Yeah,
this.
I'm super impressed. This is great. I
I'm
love
like,
it. I love it.
Have I forgotten about my pursuits and hobbies? I think I need to get back to that. It's a good reminder for me.
It's a good reminder for sure.
So
for
yeah,
sure.
I think this
Love it,
was
love it.
this.
Thanks for inviting us. This is great.
This was fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you so much for your guys, for your time, guys. Oh my God, my English. So we'd like to end on this good note today. So I guess you guys are motivated, and we will see you on the next episode. All right, thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.